One of the reasons why some people don't know what they're supposed to do with their lives is because God has not revealed it to them yet. At the right time, God will reveal it to them. It will come to their heart. Unfortunately, when a lot of us discover what we're supposed to do, we jump out to execute it. And what happens is we end up executing ourselves. In other words, we get into trouble because it's not the right time for us to fulfill what we're supposed to do. There are other things that need to take place in order for us to move forward with what God has called us to do. Let's find out more about those things in the next few minutes. Hello and welcome to How to Find God's Will for Your Life, Part 8. By God's will, I am dealing with God's specific will for your life. I mentioned that in order to find out what God has specifically called you to do, number one, it is through God that you will find it. Number two, you will have a heart or a desire or a passion for it. And number three, there's a time for it. But even within the timing of what God has called you to do, there are other things that need to happen in order for you to move forward with what God has called you to do. I believe there are at least 4 seasons within the time period that you find your purpose. The first is when you find it. By it, I mean your purpose. The first season is when you find it. The second season is when you train for it. The third season is when you do it. And the fourth season is when you see the fruit of it. Unfortunately, a lot of us get to point number one, the first season, we find out about it and we want to immediately do it and we want to see the fruit of it. No wonder a lot of us fail. It doesn't work like that. That's not the process. The process is you find out about it, you train for it, you do it, then you see the fruit of it. For Moses, he found out about it when he was 40. Unfortunately, like so many of us, he jumped out to do it. And of course, he got himself in trouble. He tried to pursue his calling. And what happened is he ended up being pursued instead. Okay. There's a time for it and you have to train for it. Okay. So for Moses, 40 years old, he found out about it. Between 40 and 80 was when he was training for it. Unbeknownst to him, he was really training for what God had called him to do in the back of the desert for 40 years. So between 40 and 80 was the second season training for it. At 80, that's when he began to do it. Moses was 80 years old when he began to get the children of Israel out of Egypt. At 120, that's when he saw the fruit of it. He didn't get into the promised land, but he saw it from afar. The same can be said about Joseph. He found out about his purpose at 17. That's when he had the dream. Between 17 and 30, he was a slave in Egypt. That was his training. Unbeknownst to Joseph, he was training for what God had called him to do. At 30, that's when he began to do it. And between 30 and 110, he began to see the fruit of his labor. Okay, he died when he was 110 years old. So there's a timing for everything. A time for you to find out about it, a time for you to train for it, a time for you to do it, and a time for you to see the fruit of it. So if you're listening and you have an idea of what you're supposed to do, you've tried it, you haven't seen any fruit, be encouraged, keep up the good work. Do not be weary in well-doing, because in due time you will reap your harvest. If you don't have any idea what you're supposed to do, relax. God has not revealed it to you yet. So number one, it is through God that you will find it. Number two, you'll have a heart for it. Number three, there's a time for it. And number four, sometimes the reason why some people haven't found out their purpose is because they are in the wrong place. Find out about this place next week.